Today we are taking a look at the top candidates in the National Hockey League who are going to be classified as bounce-back players. So these are players who did not have the greatest year last year for a variety of reasons and are looking to bounce back and get back to their normal selves or even exceed what they've done before. We'll discuss those players coming up next. So welcome back to another video here at Top Shelf Hockey. As I mentioned, today we're taking a look at a top candidate as a bounce-back player from each and every NHL team. So I'm going to be naming 32 players here today that are going to be qualified here in this category. So we're going to go alphabetically, start with the Anaheim Ducks, work our way all the way down to the end here. I'll give you a brief explanation on each player so the video doesn't go too long. Let me know down in the comments below who you feel are the most likely candidates to qualify under this category and be a bounce back player. Starting with Anaheim, I'm going with Rickard Rakell. Rakell's a former 30-goal scorer playing for a new contract. He's entering the final year of his deal. Wouldn't be shocking if he's traded. The Ducks are not expected to be overly competitive this year, and if they're not, then that makes sense that he could get moved on. But I can see him fighting for a right to be expendable, as well as getting that next contract and getting back to his old scoring habits that he had a few years back. Going on to the Arizona Coyotes, I'm taking newly acquired defenseman Shane Gostisbehere, who they picked up from the Philadelphia Flyers. I feel like Ghost has had a lot to prove. He's certainly going to be getting a new beginning, a new start. Not going to be on a terrific team. The Coyotes look like they're going to be a fairly weak team on paper, but because of that, he should be able to play a fairly prominent role. At least I think he can, and we'll see closer to what we did during his breakout year a number of years back. Going on to the Boston Bruins, we're going with Charlie Coyle. Coyle's a guy who needs to bounce back and really step forward for the Bruins this year. They're relying on him to be a number 2 center, although Jack Studnicka is looking to prove a lot as well and has given him a lot of healthy competition here in training camp. But Coyle really needs to step up with guys like David Krejci not there anymore. He's certainly going to be expected to provide more offense. He's coming off a knee surgery, should hopefully be as good or better than he's been in recent years. Going on to the Buffalo Sabres, and I'm going with newly signed RFA defenseman Rasmus Dahlin. Now, Dahlin certainly seemed to get better under new head coach Don Granato near the end of last year. I think he can pick up where that left off and continue to be building towards the defenseman we thought we would see when he was drafted number 1 overall not that long ago. Of course, that's only been 3 years. He's certainly looking like a good defenseman, but it's fair to say he's not quite at the level of some of the other young, prominent D around the NHL here yet. I know many hailed him as being a generational type defenseman, and right now he hasn't shown that. I think he can still be a really good defenseman. He's nowhere near his peak, but I think he needs to bounce back and really show what he can do in Buffalo. They're going to need him tremendously this year. I think earlier in the beginning of his career, we actually saw a better version of Dahlin than we even saw most recently. So I think he needs to bounce back, get back to that, and take it a step further. Next up, we have the Calgary Flames, and I'm selecting Sean Monahan. Monahan really needs to bounce back this year to help the Calgary Flames move forward. He's had down seasons a couple years in a row, but did have a pretty significant surgery this offseason. Hopefully what he's been dealing with has been corrected, and he can get back to his goal-scoring ways. Now, next up, the Carolina Hurricanes. I'm taking goaltender Freddie Anderson. The last couple of years in Toronto have only been okay, not great. I certainly failed to get things done in the playoffs, but that's certainly not just on him. That's on the whole team. They certainly lost as a team in round 1 the last number of years, but Anderson, for the most part, really wasn't much of an issue. But last year he was hurt a lot, and he really didn't play well when he was in. Obviously, that was a big part of the reason why he was able to move on to go to Carolina. That, along with the salary cap, and I think between he and Antti Raanta, they're going to challenge each other, be more of a 1A, 1B situation, and I think Anderson will provide some solid goaltending with a real solid offensive and defensive team in front of him. Going on to the Blackhawks, I'm going with Dylan Strome. Dylan Strome has to bounce back and show what he did when he was first acquired by the Blackhawks, or he's going to find himself likely being traded. With the emergence of Jonathan Toews coming back, that certainly creates a logjam at center ice, and I know many felt that if Toews did come back, that Strome likely would be a player they would part ways with. Well, they're still not 100% certain on what Toews is able to do. He played his first preseason game yesterday. Didn't look too bad, but certainly building up his energy and everything he can handle. Will he be a full-time player this year? There's still some question marks around that we don't know. So until they do, Strome's a Blackhawk. But if Taves proves that he's able to go like he used to, then I expect him to be moved. And he's going to have to be playing not only for a contract, but for a roster spot. And he needs to give it his absolute best. Moving on to the Avalanche in Colorado, I'm selecting defenseman Erik Johnson. Johnson, again, a player who battled injuries last year, can certainly come in and provide some more size and strength on that blue line that it desperately needs. It showed in the playoffs last year. That was one of the big reasons why they were not able to get past the Vegas Golden Knights, and he will certainly play a big role in that resurgence this year. The Avs are again expected to be a top-notch team, and I think Johnson getting back to what he's able to, hopefully stay healthy, that would be a big part of him bouncing back, is just being able to be in the lineup night in and night out. Going on to the Columbus Blue Jackets, and I'm taking sniper Patrik Laine. Last year was a tough year for Laine and Dubois, who he was traded for. Obviously, changing teams in the middle of a unique season, obviously dealing with quarantines and all that kind of stuff didn't make matters any easier. Obviously getting used to a new coach, a new style. I really don't think Laine meshed well with John Tortorella. Now that they've got a new coaching staff and they get a fresh start there, I think Patrik Laine, who only signed a one-year contract, so he's also playing for his next deal, will bounce back and we'll see somewhat closer to what we've seen that 35-40 goal-scoring winger when his first few years in the National Hockey League. Going on to the Dallas Stars, this one was an easy one. I'm going with Tyler Seguin, who only played 3 games last year due to being out with a significant surgery. Obviously, the year before when they were in the Stanley Cup Finals, I know he took a lot of heat and criticism for not being overly strong with his play, but you know what? Tyler Seguin was going through a lot, and the fact he was even playing with something, now that we know all that in retrospect, certainly hopefully changes the outlook for some people, but Seguin could have a huge year for Dallas. Having him in the lineup will make a huge difference, and likely is a difference between them being a playoff team versus not. Going on to the Red Wings, I'm taking Tyler Bertuzzi. Now, Bertuzzi might not be the best choice here, given the fact that he's not going to be able to play a bunch of games in Canada due to being unvaccinated. But at this point, Bertuzzi did miss a lot of time last year, is a big part of the young core in the Detroit organization, and I do suspect that he will have a strong campaign for the Red Wings here as well and bounce back to what he provided a couple of years back. Going on to the Edmonton Oilers, I'm taking the veteran defenseman who they acquired from Chicago, Duncan Keith. I think Keith can bounce back and be a better version of himself. I don't expect him to be the guy he was when the Hawks were winning Stanley Cups, but I think he can play less minutes, be positioned better with the Oilers on the second pair kind of role, and hopefully just be a better version of Duncan Keith. Like I said, he doesn't have to be, what he was 10, 12 years ago. I don't expect that, but he can certainly be better than what he was last year in Chicago. Things were starting to get ugly, but I think he was also playing way too much, logging too much minutes, trying to do too much, and I think that being out of the way now will hopefully change things and allow him to be more productive. The Florida Panthers were taking goaltender Sergei Bobrovsky. He absolutely has to bounce back if this team is going to be as good as many feel they are going into this regular season. He's not living up to that mega contract he signed. He's got some heat from Spencer Knight pushing him for playing time. I think we're going to see a better version of Bob this year and get between the pipes, and I do think, though, he'll have to share the workload more with Knight than he might have wanted to, getting more starts, but Bobrovsky has to bounce back to what he is prior to that contract. It's been a brutal start to his time with the Florida Panthers. Now, going on to the LA Kings, I'm taking newly acquired winger Victor Arvidsson, who they traded for from the Nashville Predators. Arvidsson's numbers certainly were down last year, and I think getting back with a new team here, with a rejuvenated Kings lineup, who they have some other new additions as well. I think the Kings are going to be making some good progress this year, and Victor Arvidsson can certainly be an absolutely huge part of that. I think he could be back to being that 25 to 30 goal scoring winger that we saw just a few years ago. Going on to the Minnesota Wild, we're taking Matt Dumba. Now that Dumba knows for sure his future is secured with the team, there was a lot of things going on last year when it comes to a lot of things off the ice as well as on the ice, which a lot of it clouded his future with the Wild. We now know that after the Suter and Parise buyouts and other moves they've made, he is safe there. He's named an alternate captain. He still has a few years left on a $6 million contract. And I think we'll see a better version of Matt Dumba and put up some offensive numbers like he did a few years ago when he was really looking like one of the better offensive defensemen around the NHL. The Montreal Canadiens are next, and we're taking winger/centerman Jonathan Drouin. Durant could only get better from this point after everything he went through last year. Recently opened up about a lot of things he was battling off the ice, which is why he took the extended leave of absence, which was necessary to get his mental health in order. Certainly was nice to see him be so open and transparent about what he was dealing with, and certainly makes things understandable as well. You have to remember, professional athletes deal with a ton of pressure, and struggling with these types of things are not uncommon, but it is uncommon, and hopefully becomes more common being more open about it and comfortable talking about it publicly. But I think Durant can be a great fit on a line with Christian Dvorak, maybe Josh Anderson on the other side, and I think they can be a real productive second line for the Habs. So hopefully he can get things back on track. With Nashville, we're taking Ryan Johansson. To be completely honest, I don't have a ton of faith in this Predators team. I think they're going to be pretty low in the standings. I went with Johansson for lack of a better option. You could probably maybe say Philip Forsberg, but really the whole team didn't really do the greatest last year. But Johansson, if you look between him and Matt Duchene, I think Johansson's a little bit more likely to bounce back, just because I think his level of caring and wanting to get better is higher. So we'll see, but that team to me is in need of more of a rebuild. I think David Poile wants to let on. New Jersey, we're taking Tomas Tatar, who was acquired via free agency from Montreal. I think his confidence was down last year. Didn't play a lot. Was clearly, not a part of the future with the Habs. Saw that, and I think it affected his play. And now that he seems to be in New Jersey, he seems to be rejuvenated, ready for a fresh start. And I think he can play well with a lot of those younger, top offensively gifted forwards that he'll likely have a chance to play with between 5-on-5 and a power play, and certainly put up some much better statistics. New York Islanders were taking Captain Anders Lee. Of course, Lee missed a lot of time at the end of last year due to significant injury. I think Anders Lee might just be that goal-scoring winger that they are missing. Obviously, we talked a lot about the fact that they wanted to add a top-scoring winger, and to be honest, I think they could stand to add another one on top of Lee, but I think the captain will certainly see some increased numbers this year, likely playing a lot with Matthew Barzal again, and I'm not sure he'll hit 40 goals like he did before, but I can certainly see him bouncing back and being 30+. New York Rangers, to me, I'm taking defenseman Jacob Trouba. To me, he's not living up to that $8 million contract. He's certainly been already exceeded back on that blue line by Adam Fox. I wonder at some point what the future might hold for Trouba in New York, depending on how his play goes. I think they like his character. I think they like him off the ice. But to me, with what he's getting paid, I don't know that he's giving enough. So I'd like to see him bounce back this year. I think he's capable of it. That Rangers team seems poised for a major step forward. He could be a huge part of that. He was once a 50-point defenseman. I'm not sure he'll get there again, given the limited offensive starts he's going to be given, considering who he also has on that back end with him, like Fox, for example. But I do think he can be a much more productive, effective D than he was last year. The Ottawa Senators were taking Colin White, and it's, again, another player who is a bit of a necessity here for him to bounce back and be that guy he was a few years ago when he signed that 6-year contract. He seemed to struggle really the last couple of years ever since he's gotten that deal. Played a lot in the bottom six, which is not really where he's suited for. I'd like to see him bounce back and grab at least a solid top 9 role for sure and be a little bit more consistent player for the Sens and get some more consistent offense going. The Philadelphia Flyers, this one absolutely has to be Carter Hart. I mean, he has to bounce back, or the Flyers don't stand a chance because he has to stop some pucks. And that's all there is to it when it comes to Carter Hart. Obviously, a lot of it I do believe was mental. I do think that once you get rattled to that certain level as an athlete, it really affects your mental health. And I do wonder if, I don't know everything he's done, obviously, to prepare himself for this year, but I would imagine that a lot of the things he was working on was his focus and the mental health and getting himself cleared and ready for a fresh start here this year. But certainly he's a terrific young goaltender. I don't think he's forgotten how to play. Sometimes you just need to step away and get things sorted out and then make a comeback, and I can see him bouncing back and being that goalie that we all expected him to be. With Pittsburgh, I'm taking Jason Zucker. Zucker's a player to me that can be a 20-25 goal scorer. He's going to get more opportunity to play some big minutes, especially with guys like Crosby and Malkin out to start the season. He's not a centerman, but the wingers are going to have to really pick up the slack here and score more goals if this team is going to have a decent start to the year, and Zucker could be a huge part of that. In San Jose, we're going with Erik Karlsson. His play has really fallen off since the trade from Ottawa to San Jose. But to be honest, I just don't know if it can get a whole lot worse than what we've seen. It can only get better. I don't really think we're ever going to see the Erik Karlsson bounce back to the point that he was in the 2017 playoffs with the Senators when he was one of the top players in the world. But at this point, I think he can bounce back and be a better version of himself and be more productive in that San Jose blue line. The Seattle Kraken, we're taking Jaden Schwartz. Jaden Schwartz was going through a lot last year off the ice as well. Decided to go to Seattle for a fresh start. Really, listened to everything he had to say during the offseason about, leaving St. Louis, which was a tough decision, getting that new start in Seattle, dealing with all the off-ice stuff that personally that he was going through. I think this guy can be a top-line winger for the Kraken and get back to being a 25 to 30 goal scorer. The St. Louis Blues, I'm going to go with goalie Jordan Binnington. If Jordan Binnington, like some of these other goalies I've talked about, if he can bounce back to be the guy he was in the playoffs when they won the Stanley Cup, it's going to make all the difference in the world for this St. Louis Blues team. I think it's going to be a difficult thing for him to accomplish, but it's necessary for this Blues team to really stand a chance and be a solid playoff team. To be honest, if Binnington is not any better than what he's been, then I'm not convinced the Blues are even a playoff team. So I think they really, really need him to do that. The Tampa Bay Lightning, I'm going with Brian Elliott. Of course, both goalies in Philly last year, him and Hart, both had down years and needed something to give here. Elliott goes on to Tampa for a fresh start. He's going to have a whole different team in front of him, a stronger defensive team, different structure, and I think we'll see Brian Elliott, even though he's not going to play a ton, and we'll probably see him in about 20, 25 games, and I think we're going to see a whole different version of him in Tampa. With Toronto, we're going to go with Andre Kasha. Of course, this is all contingent on him remaining healthy, which has been the thing he's been unable to do for probably like 3 to 4 years now. But if he can stay healthy and get a solid top 6 or top 9 role with the Leafs, which I think they see in him, if he can do that, then I can certainly see him bouncing back and being a 20 goal scorer. With Vancouver, I'm taking Oliver Ekman-Larsson, and what I've seen in training camp has been kind of so-so. I'm a little leery on making this selection, but they need him to be better. There's just no question. For what he's getting paid and everything they went through to make that trade, they need OEL to be a better version of himself and be what he was early in his career, which certainly got a lot more rave reviews and convinced the Coyotes to sign him long-term and make him their captain. Now, going on to the Golden Knights, we're going to go with Evgeny Dadonov, who had a down year in Ottawa after being assigned as a free agent from the Florida Panthers. Dadonov was traded to Vegas for a fresh start, and I do think that after, he was, last year he was away from his family. He was in a new location, getting used to new teammates, all these COVID restrictions. It was tough. So I blame a lot of that on why he didn't do better in Ottawa, but I do think at the same time that the Vegas team might be a better fit for him. Certainly surrounded by some more veteran guys there that he can get used to. I mean, he played with Alexander Barkov for a long time, and I'm not saying that he was only a good player because of Barkov, but guys like Barkov make everybody better. Same thing in Mark Stone in Vegas. The guys like that just have that impact, and I think depending on where they put him in the lineup, he can have that same effect in Vegas. With Washington, I think it has to be Evgeny Kuznetsov. Kuznetsov is certainly another guy that was rumored to be moved and wasn't. I think we've seen here the last couple of years his numbers have been down. I've seen Washington media suggest that they feel that Kuznetsov is ready to get things back on track and really knows he's got to push himself this year, obviously after coming close to getting traded. And it's really at this point, if they can keep the off-ice stuff to a minimum, he can stay focused and get back to playing like he did when they won the Stanley Cup, then he can be a whole lot of a better player. And lastly here, the Winnipeg Jets. This one was easy. We're going Pierre-Luc Dubois. Like Patrick Laine, I think Dubois had it even tougher than Laine. It was a tougher transition going into Canada. He had a much longer layover for being quarantined. Come back from his quarantine, was injured. So he starts the year in Columbus. He wants out. It gets known publicly. That creates a lot of awkward situation with the team. Ends up getting traded. Eventually, like I said, he even had some moments on the ice with Columbus before the trade when it looked like he wasn't even trying. Gets to Winnipeg, has to go through a 2-week quarantine. That certainly changes everything again. A 2-week layoff, like when you're doing nothing, you can't even skate on your own. And then you go in and you get hurt, and then he's laid off again. Like it just wasn't there's no rhythm last year, right? So to me, after having a normal offseason and getting through a full training camp with his new team, I think we're going to see Pierre-Luc Dubois be a lot closer to the version of himself he was as a dominant center in Columbus not that long ago. So I think he can be a dominant force once again. So those are my 32 bounce back players here for the 2021-22 NHL season. Of course, like I said before, I want to know what your selections are as well. So leave some comments down below. We'll discuss further. If you're new to this channel, make sure you subscribe and stick around. We'll keep you up to date with all the latest news, rumors, and analysis on all 32 NHL teams. Thank you for watching, and I'll catch you next time.